What's up everyone, Darcblade here with another Hunter's Guide to Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. In this video, we're going to be showing you another endgame build, this time for the bow. Now, what is an endgame build? Well, it is a build constructed from some of the rarest armor, decorations, and weapons in the game. They do feature Krios crafting, however it's not to the extent that it's unobtainable, and they're designed to take on the absolute endgame content in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Now as always, if you find these videos helpful, informative, or even entertaining, please consider leaving a like on the video as well as subscribing to the channel, as I try to bring you a variety of builds for a different variety of hunting styles. Now when it comes to the bow, many of you may know it's my favourite weapon in the game. Able to deal out a lot of damage, especially when it utilises elemental damage, it's able to bring down monsters quickly, but in return it does lack a little bit when it comes to survival. This endgame build video that I'm going to be showing off here is simply known as the all-round bow build. It's a build that has a little bit of everything. It features elemental damage, raw damage, affinity based skills, stamina based skills, and some quality of life skills, giving you a build that should be able to take on pretty much any monster you come across. So for this all-round build you'll need the following. First of all, you'll need the Arc Helm, you'll then need the Flaming Espinas muscles, the Silver Soul Braces, Flaming Espinas bowels, and the Malzeno Greaves. When it comes to your Petalace, this is down to personal preference. Obviously go with Demon Petalace if you want to focus on pure damage, or go with the Absolute Petalace if you want some extra survivability. As for your Talisman, as always no one is going to have the exact same talismans. So if you're able to get a talisman that has at least weakness exploit level 2 on it with some decoration slots, you should be able to produce something similar to what is shown here. As for the weapon, now this is down to personal preference in all honesty, and it is dictated by what monster you are fighting. This build can use any arrow type, but I tend to favour spread arrows. You'll also want to use weapons that have elements that best counter whatever monster you're going against. So for this build demonstration, I'm going to be using the Queen's Rhapsody Plus, which is the Rathian bow. This means we're using a fire build, but it can be interchangeable with other elements. For example, if you wanted to use a water bow, use the Chale War Bow, which is the Daimyo Hermitor bow. For the thunder element, go with the Kezu bow. For the ice element, go with the Barioth bow. And for the dragon element, go with the Gold Rathian bow. The Valstrax bow is also a nice alternative. As for the Krios crafting on the weapon, you want to go for a Rampage decoration slot upgrade if the weapon you're using doesn't already have a tier 3 Rampage decoration slot on it. Failing this, increasing the elemental rating is a nice alternative, followed by attack or affinity. As for the Rampage decoration, there are a few you want to consider. First of all, if you're fighting a monster that is weak to elements, go with the Elemental Bane. If not, go with the Daora's Soul, but you can also get away with using any of the anti-species decorations as well. Now speaking of decorations, you have a fair few to play around with, and some of them are optional. So as you can see here, first of all I've gone for Crit Element decoration. Now this is an optional decoration in all honesty, and it won't be available on all the bows available to you. But if a bow does have a tier 4 decoration slot on it, then you can use the Crit Element. This also has a Brace Jaw for a point and flinch free. Again, this is another optional jaw. I've then gone for Spread Jaws to max out spread up. Of course, if you were using a different bow type that has either rapid or piercing arrows, then you'll want to replace this Spread Jaw with either a piercing jaw or 4-shot jaw to increase the damage of those arrow types. Then gone for a Spirit Bird Core jaw for a point in the Spirit Bird Core skill. I've then gone for an Attack Jaw to get 4 points in attack boost, Crit Jaws to max out crit boost, Blaze Jaws to max out fire attack. Now remember, if you're using a different bow with a different element, you would replace these Blaze Jaws to match whatever new element you are using. I've then gone for a Mighty Bow Jaw for the Bow Charge Plus skill, Refresh Jaw to max out Stamina Surge, a Jumping Jaw which is kind of optional for a point in Evade Extender, and then finally Quick Load Jaw to get the reload speed up to at least level 2. So if you've done what I've done here, you'll have a fluctuating raw attack of either 393 or 398 depending if Bloodlust is active or not. You'll also have a fluctuating elemental fire rating of either 58 or 56, again depending on Bloodlust. You'll have a fluctuating affinity rating, which can either be 0% base affinity or 20%, again depending on Bloodlust. But you have to remember this can either be 70% or 50% when you take into account weakness exploit. And you'll have a strong defense of 767, that is strong against ice and fire, but unfortunately weaker to the other elements. As for the switch skills, these are down to personal preference as always, but I do recommend using Dodge Bolt, especially if you are using spread arrows to give us added survivability and another attack to our rotation. So when it comes to the skills, first of all you'll have fire attack at level 5, increasing the fire rating and thus the fire damage of this build. Remember, if you are using a different weapon with a different element, you'd replace fire attack to match whatever new element you are using, increasing the damage of that specific element. You'll then have attack boost at level 4, increasing the raw attack of this build, and at level 4 or above it grants us a percentage bonus to our raw attack as well. You'll then have critical boost at level 3, increasing the damage of our attacks whenever they crit a monster. However, it only applies to the raw portion of an attack, not the elemental portion. You'll then have weakness exploit at level 3, allowing our attacks to have increased affinity whenever we're attacking monster weak points. And with the bow, as you can aim the weapon and aim where your attacks are going, this means that we should be able to take advantage of this quite effectively. You'll then have critical element at level 3. Critical element is a skill like critical boost but applies to the elemental portion of an attack, so when our attacks crit a monster they'll deal increased elemental damage. You'll then have stamina surge at level 3. Stamina surge is a skill that increases how quickly we can recover our stamina, and it's one of the key quality of life skills for the bow as it's a stamina based weapon. You'll then have spread up at level 3. Spread up is a skill that increases the damage of spread arrows. Now remember, if you were using a different bow with a different arrow type, i.e. it mainly focused on piercing arrows or rapid fire arrows, you'd replace spread up with either normal up or pierce up, increasing the damage of those arrow types. Anyway, you'll then have Charge Master at level 3. This is a skill that when active grants a bonus to our elemental damage. You'll then have Marathon Runner at level 2, a byproduct of the armor we're using, but is sort of useful for the bow. It's not essential. Basically this slows down stamina depletion when we're performing actions that drain stamina slowly, such as dashing, or in this case of the bow, holding down your charge shots. Anyway, you'll then have Constitution at level 2. It would have been nice to get this higher, but Constitution at level 2 does reduce the stamina depletion when we evade and shoot our arrows. You'll then have reload speed at level 2. You only need this to get to level 2 to be honest for the bow, as it allows us to automatically equip coatings. You can even drop this skill if you wanted to if the bow you are using has very few coatings to actually switch between. You'll then have blight resistance at level 2, a byproduct of our armor but is useful as it reduces the duration of elemental blights on our hunter. You'll then have Coalescence at level 2. Coalescence is a skill that works in unison with Bloodlust, which we'll talk about in a moment, that when our hunter removes a blight or abnormal status from themselves, will gain increased raw attack and elemental attack. So when we overcome the effects of Bloodlust, this will kick in, granting us those bonuses. Anyway, you'll then have Mind's Eye at level 1, a byproduct of the Krios crafting. This is not needed whatsoever. You'll then have Bow Charge Plus at level 1, increasing our maximum bow charge level by 1, allowing us to overall deal more damage. Basically, when you look at a bow, you'll see that the last arrow option is normally grayed out. Bow Charge Plus unlocks this. You'll then have Evade Extender at level 1, which is an optional skill of our decorations, but I do find it useful and a quality of life skill that increases the distance at which we evade and dodge and such. This definitely helps when it comes to our survivability. You'll then have Flinch Free at level 1, reducing minor knockbacks from monsters and especially our allies. You'll then have Bloodlust at level 1, which is a skill that when we enter combat will gain the effects of the Frenzy virus. Our health will thus gradually deplete, leaving a portion of red health on our health bar, but as a result, we'll gain increased attack, evasion capabilities, and reduce stamina depletion. However, there are two possible outcomes to this Frenzy virus. If you notice the purple Frenzy bar filling up above your health bar, if you let this fill up, then you'll be fully afflicted, and thus you'll take increased damage from monsters. However, should you deal enough damage to a monster before this bar fills up, you'll fight off the effects of the Frenzy virus, which in turn will heal you for the health it drained and give you increased affinity. And as this bow build can deal a decent amount of damage, you should be able to fight off the health draining effects of the Frenzy virus quite quickly. Anyway, you'll then have Spirit Bird Call at level 1, which is an optional skill thanks to our decorations that allows us to receive the effects of random Spirit Birds at fixed intervals during a quest. This means that we don't always have to go out of our way to find Spirit Birds, they will come to us eventually. This doesn't apply to arena-based quests though. You'll then have Blade Scale Hone at level 1. This is a nice skill for the bow, as when we dodge roll to evade an attack, our close range coatings will get a temporary damage boost. Anyway, you'll then have Element Exploit at level 1. This increases our elemental damage by attacking monster body parts that have an elemental weakness of 20 or above. This is a nice skill when it comes to dealing elemental damage, but it is restricted by the monsters you are going against and if they are weak to elements or not. Anyway, you'll finally have Burst at level 1, which used to be known as Chain Crit, which continuously landing attacks on a monster will increase our attack and elemental attack. So there we have it, those are all the major skills for the all-round build. Now let's quickly talk about the Krios crafting. Now as always, these endgame builds, they do feature Krios crafting. I'm not ignoring it completely, as it is an endgame function of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. However, I'm not making use of it to the point where the skills are absolutely incredibly rare to get. Like, for example, not every armor piece is going to feature attack boost or weakness exploit or critical boost. There may be 1 or 2 points in them, but for the most part, the skills shown on these builds were obtained with very little farming. So for the Arc Helm, when it comes to the Krios crafting, I've got a tier 1 decoration slot as well as a point in blade scale hone. To be honest, just getting a tier 2 decoration slot to allow you to get the blade scale hone via decorations could be another option for you here. For the Flaming Espinasse Muscle, I've got a tier 3 decoration slot upgrade. However, I'm only using a tier 2 decoration slot in that upgraded slot, so it's kind of wasted. And I've got an additional tier 1 decoration slot. For the Silver Soul Braces, I've got a tier 2 decoration slot upgrade. For the Flaming Espinasse Bows, I've got a point in Stamina Surge and a reduction in the Marathon Runner skill. To be honest, just getting an additional tier 2 decoration slot on this armor piece probably would give you the same results. And then finally for the Malzeno Greaves, I've got a tier 2 decoration slot and a point in Mind's Eye. So there we have it, those are all the Krios crafting upgrades with this build. But every build out there, even the endgame builds, come with various pros and cons. No build is absolutely perfect. When it comes to this all-round bow build, its biggest pro is its damage output. Whilst yes, you still have to take into consideration a monster's elemental weakness if you want to deal maximum damage, this build nonetheless is still able to take down monsters incredibly quickly. On top of that, this build also has decent stamina management skills. It has maxed out Stamina Surge, Marathon Runner and especially Constitution, and this combined with either Dash Juice or the Dango Fighter's skill when you're eating at the canteen means that your stamina management is very good. And then finally is that this build is interchangeable and easily switchable with the various elements in the game. So whilst yes, this build may not be able to take on every monster without adjustments, you can easily swap out the bow with the other bows mentioned at the start of this video to best counter whatever monster you're going up against. But of course there are cons. One of the biggest cons for this build is it is kind of fragile. This is thanks to the Bloodlust skill mainly. Bloodlust draining our health will leave us at risk, and the bow is already a fragile weapon, meaning that you can take very few hits before you cart. And the other con is, unfortunately, this is kind of a decoration heavy build, so if you're jumping into endgame right away, you may not have all the decorations that are shown here. Nonetheless, if you're looking for a decent all-round build for the bow that features elemental damage, raw damage, affinity based skills, stamina management skills, and more, I strongly recommend this one. It's fun to use and takes down even afflicted monsters in a relatively quick time. But what are your thoughts? Please leave a comment down below, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you the endgame all-round bow build for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.